Imagine an ER waiting room with your favorite blanket and pillow, your cat's Pixel and Widget, and your mom's chicken soup. At Dignity Health, we know the only thing worse than being in pain is being stuck in an ER waiting room. So we offer In Quicker. You get an estimated ER arrival time online so you can start your wait at home. It's just another way of putting leading-edge medicine within easy reach. Learn more at strosehospitals.org/ER. Dignity Health, including St. Rose Dominicans, Rose de Lima, San Martin, and Siena campuses in Henderson and Las Vegas. Hello, human kindness.
Nevadans are battle-born, but lately we've been tested like never before. So when COVID came to Nevada, Senator Cortez Masto went to work. She got loans for small businesses that saved 500,000 Nevada jobs and worked with President Biden to provide stimulus checks and tax cuts. Senator Cortez Masto got new funding to keep Nevada's first responders on the job, too. Call Senator Cortez Masto at 202-224-3542 and tell her to keep delivering relief for Nevada. Paid for by Majority Forward.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to the program. We're going to dive right in today, considering we have a relatively long article. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team has been beating the drums for quite some time about her inhumane incarceration. And recently, adding to their voice has been Ghislaine Maxwell's family, in particular her brother Ian Maxwell. Well, our article today is going to touch on that some more. Ian Maxwell is back out in the press, and he's making the case for his sister to get bailed out before this trial. Now, I can't really fault the guy for wanting to defend his sister, right? I get it. I'd want to defend my sister too. And nobody wants to believe that their loved ones are capable of such heinous behavior. But let's be real. How close were Ian Maxwell and Ghislaine Maxwell? Did he know everything she was doing all the time? Do you know everything your brother or sister is up to at all times? I certainly don't. I mean, we would like to think that our loved ones are doing the right thing. We'd like to think that our loved ones aren't engaging in criminal conspiracies. We'd like to think that our loved ones aren't abusing children. And it's hard to wrap our minds around it when that information is brought forward. So I don't blame Ian Maxwell for wanting to defend his sister, right? I don't think anyone should blame this guy for wanting to defend his sister. But what I will say is this: the evidence is a mile high. And even if this was my family member, even if this was my sister or my closest friend or whoever, if all of this evidence was presented and all of this circumstantial evidence was available, and I didn't know what you were up to for large gaps of your life, then I don't think I'd be coming out and being so adamant in your defense here. Because you only know what you know, and you only know the face that Ghislaine Maxwell, or insert whoever, here puts on to try and fake you out, right? So while it's all fine and well for Ian Maxwell to come out and try and defend his sister, let's be real. You don't know what she was up to. You have no idea what she was doing during the Jeffrey Epstein saga. Or maybe you do, Ian. And if that's the case, maybe you should speak to the authorities as well, sir. But if you do not know, and you weren't around then, how could you possibly make such an ardent defense about your sister's innocence? So basically, you're doing what you're blaming the media of doing, but just in a different way. It's okay if you do it because the narrative is moving in the direction that you want it to move in. So it's okay then. But you see, this is how this works, all right? This is a public case. A huge interest of the general public at large. So of course people are going to be talking about this. And of course people are going to have their own ideas and opinions about what's going on. The same as you, Ian Maxwell. And the fact that anyone would think that this is targeted at Ghislaine Maxwell simply because Jeffrey Epstein is no longer around, that is such a short-sighted approach to this whole entire thing that I can't even put it into words. Let's be very clear. Ghislaine Maxwell is being accused of her own crimes. This has nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein at this point. She engaged in her own crimes, and she no longer has the umbrella of Epstein to shield her from this radioactive fallout. So now, when the spotlight finally turns to her, and people start pointing to the finger at her, and unfortunately she's left holding the hot potato, well, you're the last man standing, or woman standing in this case. And despite what Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers have to say, and what her brother has to say, in my opinion, she was a co-conspirator, a co-boss, and somebody who helped Jeffrey Epstein not only put all of this into action, but also helped him with the actual abuse of girls according to them. So I'd say, Ian Maxwell, that this is the kind of case where someone like Ghislaine Maxwell, your sister unfortunately, shouldn't get bail. The crimes are heinous, the allegations are serious, and there is a risk of flight. No matter what you or anyone else says, having those passports, having that money, having the ability to disappear will certainly guide the judge's decision. And that's what we have seen for the past 2 attempts, and I would be shocked if we didn't see that this next time around. Alright, so let's see what ABC News has to say about all of this. This article is from abcnews.go.com. Headline: Ghislaine Maxwell's brother insists she should be treated as presumed innocent. She is not Epstein. And I agree. Everybody should be treated as innocent until they're found guilty. But that doesn't mean that questions won't be asked. So what do you think? That nobody should talk about the case? Nobody should have an opinion about the case? That's not how things work here in the United States, Mr. Maxwell. All right? Maybe where you're from, that's how it works. Maybe you can, squash people's opinions and voices. But here in the good old United States, that shit's not going to work. At least not yet. So, we're going to continue to discuss your sister. We're going to continue to discuss the heinous crimes that she's been alleged to commit. And we're going to see it all the way through to the very end. And guess what? July's coming up very quickly. We're going to see what's what in July. The rubber is going to meet the road, and we're going to see just how great and how much evidence that you folks can provide to show us that Ghislaine Maxwell is innocent. All I have ever called for or asked for is a full-on investigation here. I've never said anybody is guilty. The circumstantial evidence certainly doesn't look good for them, right? But until somebody is tried in a court in front of their peers, they're innocent. That said, doesn't mean she should get out of jail, none of that stuff, okay? How many people are sitting in jail rotting away right now waiting for trial? A lot of them. And most of them, folks, most of them are poor. This article was authored by James Hill, Caitlin Fulmer, James Longman, and Santino Lucci. The brother of Ghislaine Maxwell, the alleged co-conspirator of deceased sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, said his sister is being subjected to what he claims is monstrous treatment in a federal detention center where she awaits trial on charges of aiding Epstein's abuse of underage girls. Oh yeah, just so monstrous. I mean, every day she's being beaten, she's being put on the rack, she's getting hit with the cat o' nine tails, they're waterboarding her. Literally none of that's occurring, okay? She's being abused because they flash a light in her cell every 15 minutes. Oh, so terrible, so terrible. And it's not even getting flashed in her face. It's getting flashed up above. I don't even want to hear it. I have a friend who did multiple years. We're talking a couple of decades in prison. And I was just talking to him about all of this. And he was saying that it's laughable to hear her attorneys and to look at the case in general and see the different things that she's able to do while in prison. He wasn't able to do none of that. And guess what? You know what he had as a lawyer? A public defender. And you know what that public defender did? Oh, he got him a nice plea deal for 20 years. So all of the nonsense and the wrangling and the crying about Ghislaine Maxwell and her treatment in prison. Look, I get it. Jail isn't fun. That shit is not fun, and there needs to be reform. But don't show up like Johnny-come-lately because your loved one is finally getting a taste and tell us about how terrible it is and how she's being tortured. My dude, that shit's not going to work. Where were you before your loved one was getting a taste? Were you out there talking about reform? Were you out there using your great amount of wealth for prison reform or anything like that? No, you weren't. Oh, so now it's a problem because your loved one has to have a couple of bologna sandwiches and sit in a cell. Guess what? Play stupid games and you win stupid prizes. It's a really ghastly experience. She's lost 20 pounds. She's losing her hair. She can't concentrate. Sounds like the stresses we all go through on a regular basis. You ever look at your kids, Ghislaine Maxwell? Ever? Oh, no, you don't have any. But how about you, Ian Maxwell? Look at your family and not know where your next meal is coming from? You want to talk about monstrous? That's monstrous. You ever go to sleep with an empty stomach? Pretty sure you didn't. So please spare me about the terrible treatment that Ghislaine Maxwell is receiving. Ian Maxwell's comments come as his youngest sister awaits a federal judge's decision on her third attempt to be granted bail ahead of her July trial. And again, look, I get it, man. Jail is not fun. Jail is not a good time. And I agree with the overall idea that there needs to be big-time reforms in our prison system. But it is a hollow argument coming from people like this, people of such means and such ability. And, you know, Ghislaine Maxwell was palling around with ex-presidents and congressmen and you name it. Was she big on jail reform? Anyone want to kick the tires and let me know about all of the work she did on jail reform before she went? How about Ian Maxwell? Any of these people do big work on jail reform and work towards making things better for inmates in jail? No, none of them have. So now that your loved one is experiencing it, now that your loved one is having a little bit of a taste, oh, now you're paying attention to how bad the conditions are in jail? Well, unfortunately, that's the way it is for the rest of us when we get in trouble. The previous two attempts were rejected after the court deemed Ghislaine Maxwell, 59, a flight risk because of the seriousness of the charges, her substantial wealth, and international ties. What do you expect the court to do? I mean, should the court just be like, nah, that's no big deal. We're just gonna let her bail out, and then we'll see what happens. Maybe she'll run, maybe she won't. Who knows? I mean, what do they expect the court to do here when somebody has all of the means that Ghislaine Maxwell has? Her latest proposal for pretrial release, which prosecutors and the alleged survivors oppose, includes an offer to place her assets of more than $20 million under the control of a monitor and to renounce her citizenship in France, where she was born, and in England, where she was raised. Oh, well, in that case, I say we just let her out now. Not only we just let her out, we don't even put an ankle monitor on her because she knows she's an honest gal. Her and her family are just very honest people, and they're going to do the right thing because they have a track record of that. I mean, come on already. Enough with the whole entire woe is me campaign here. I mean, really? And ABC running this shit? So you guys going to run the Amy Robach interview that you squashed anytime soon over there at ABC? You bunch of scoundrels. Bunch of con men. Ghislaine is an American, her brother said. She's never been a flight risk. In the year or so between when Epstein died and when she was arrested, she was in the United States all the time. She was not running away from law enforcement. Oh yeah? Ian Maxwell? Why couldn't the lawyers find her to serve her? Why did they have to go through the extraordinary steps of serving her via email, as if that ever occurred before? Menninger said she couldn't find her. So what does that mean? Her own lawyers couldn't find her. But the U.S. government knew exactly where she was, right? Ian Maxwell. See, here's the thing, folks. None of this stuff that they talk about lines up. When you have followed this case from the jump and you see all of the whinging and the nonsensical talk, you could cut right through it. Because the fact of the matter is this. All they have are technicalities and loopholes. Where's the evidence? Okay, we get it. Jail sucks. Nobody wants to be in jail. Quit crying about it, though. Okay? It is what it is. All this crying and all this whinging, 3 bail attempts. How many poor people get that ability? But yet Ghislaine Maxwell gets to just lob as many letters to the judge as she wants, right? She gets to clog up the court as much as she wants, right? Yeah, but she doesn't get special treatment. Upon Epstein's arrest in July 2019, prosecutors vowed to continue investigating his alleged co-conspirators. After his death in prison a month later, the attention of the authorities, alleged survivors, and the media quickly focused on Ghislaine Maxwell, who was once a fixture on the social scene in New York, with a Rolodex of the rich, powerful, and politically connected. See, there's a mistake there, okay? Nobody pivoted to focus on Maxwell. We've all been focusing on Maxwell since the jump. Everybody who knows about this story, everybody who has really dug into this story understands the role that Maxwell played as alleged by the survivors and people in the know, lawyers, prosecutors, you name it. All right, this isn't just a bunch of people sitting around a water cooler coming up with crazy ideas. These are allegations made by the federal government and multiple survivors. So the whole "this is because of Jeffrey Epstein" defense is BS, doesn't hold any weight, and honestly, I don't think anyone's going to buy that nonsense. Certainly not jurors. She also has faced civil lawsuits both before and after Epstein's arrest from alleged survivors of Epstein who accused her of facilitating their abuse, allegations she has long denied. She retreated from public life after Epstein's death, in an effort, her brother said, to protect her family from what he called a lynch mob mentality in the media. Oh, God. You see what they're doing, right? You see how they're trying to position themselves as the victim? As Ghislaine Maxwell is the victim here. She's the victim of a rabid media. She's not getting a fair shake. Nobody knows the real story. Okay, well, why don't you tell us the real story, Ian? Instead of crying about her conditions in jail, why don't you show some receipts, some evidence, some facts? Because where we're at right now, we certainly haven't seen any of those. And the court certainly must agree, because guess what? Ghislaine's still sitting in jail, eating bologna sandwiches, my dude. The real problem is that the media frenzy about her, which had shifted from Epstein onto her, drove her absolutely mad, he said. She's married, has a husband, and she has 2 stepchildren, and she couldn't allow the terrible frenzy of the media to be brought down on their heads. Oh yeah, because it's Ghislaine Maxwell's the victim here. Has nothing to do with what Virginia or Annie or any of these other survivors have went through, according to them, at the hands of Ghislaine Maxwell. That doesn't matter. None of that matters. It's all about Ghislaine having her life interrupted, or some media asking some questions. I have news for you there, Ian Maxwell. If the media was really doing their job, they'd be all over this shit. They'd be all over you. But they really don't care. So nice try with the media frenzy. But all you have to do is take a look at how the media covered the Meghan Markle row with the royals, and you'll see that they still don't care about this story. So please, shelf the whole entire media nonsense. That's another argument that does not work. Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested last July in an FBI raid of a secluded New Hampshire estate where she had been living for several months. An FBI agent said at a news conference announcing her arrest that the government had been discreetly keeping tabs on her whereabouts throughout their year-long investigation. So, again, we know that the government, and the federal government especially, NSA, CIA, all of those people, they collect all the metadata that gets sent out in the whole entire country, probably the world, honestly. And they can use that metadata to trace people. And we talked about the Stingray setup that they had, that they placed to catch Ghislaine Maxwell's conversations. And they probably had her under surveillance of some sort for quite some time. And you know why they did that? Because she was a flight risk, they thought. You see, that's why. So when they talk about, oh, Ghislaine Maxwell's not a flight risk, or why is she living in New Hampshire? Why so close to the Canadian border? Why so close? Why not in the sticks in Missouri? Why not in the middle of nowhere in, I don't know, Arkansas? Any answers for those questions there, Mr. Maxwell? Ghislaine Maxwell is charged with facilitating and, in some cases, participating in Epstein's alleged sexual crimes against 3 unnamed minor girls in the mid-1990s. Authorities allege that she groomed the survivors, befriended them, and put them at ease, knowing that Epstein intended to sexually abuse them. Think about those charges, and think about that crime, and think about how heinous that is. For this lady to be involved in that, what the government is alleging, and what the survivors have alleged. That's really what it comes down to. This isn't just one person pointing the finger at Maxwell, where there's some gray area, and you can say, oh, there might be an axe to grind. No. Literally dozens and dozens of people have come forward saying this. So, again, all of this is fine. All of this flowery decoration that you're putting on your sister, Mr. Maxwell. But July is quickly approaching. And we're going to see what's what come trial time. And then we're going to see what sort of receipts that you folks are going to provide. And if it looks anything like what we have seen thus far, no wonder you're so hell-bent on technicalities. She has pleaded not guilty to all the charges, which also include 2 counts of perjury. At her initial court hearing last July, one of the 3 accusers, Annie Farmer, now 41, spoke publicly via video conference and implored the judge to keep Ghislaine Maxwell detained until trial. She has never shown any remorse for her heinous crimes, for the devastating, lasting effects her actions caused. Instead, she has lied under oath and tormented her survivors, Farmer said. And that's direct testimony, okay? That's not the government alleging anymore. That's direct testimony from somebody who says she was abused by Ghislaine Maxwell. That's pretty powerful stuff there, Mr. Ian Maxwell. Pretty powerful stuff. Now, where are your witnesses that are coming forward to say that this never happened? Who do you have under oath? Who is going to be a witness at the trial in regards to Ghislaine's innocence? Since Ghislaine Maxwell's arrest last summer, her family has maintained a public silence. Her attorneys have also consistently declined to address questions from reporters, confining the defense of their client to their submissions in court. They recently filed 12 separate pretrial motions seeking to suppress certain evidence, dismiss some charges, or to toss out the entire case. And that should tell you everything you need to know. When's the last time you heard high-profile lawyers not wanting to hear themselves speak? When's the last time you heard of these high-profile lawyers not getting up and giving a bunch of press conferences? Look at the O.J. Simpson trial. You think Johnny Cochran was sitting around with his mouth shut? Hell no. He was out in the forefront, handling his business because they felt like they had a game plan. Here, from the very jump, all we have seen from Ghislaine Maxwell's team is technicalities and loopholes and technicalities. Zero evidence. No receipts. But with her bail application pending and her trial just 4 months away, her siblings decided it was time to come forward. They've also hired a family attorney, David Oscar Marcus, another Harvard graduate, by the way, and started a Twitter account dubbed GMax Facts. What is she, an underground rapper? Is she going to go to the underground rap battle and have a battle against Mav Hoffa? She's showing up? She gonna get down with Iron Solomon? GMax Facts? Give me a break. Facts, huh? Facts according to who? Not facts according to the real world, right? What's going on here is what I've referred to as the Epstein effect. Well, that's true. The Epstein effect, you mean your client hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein? You mean your client engaging in criminal activity with Jeffrey Epstein, according to the government and to the survivors? Is that what you're talking about here? She's being held because of her association with Epstein from all those years ago, which is absurd. No, what's absurd is you trying to pitch that narrative. What's absurd is you trying to act like this is all about Epstein and like nobody has come forward and blamed Ghislaine Maxwell for, abusing them. That's what's absurd. Your whole defense is absurd. The whole entire thing you're trying to do here, the whole picture you're trying to paint here is absurd. You can't hold someone in detention based on guilt by association, said Marcus, a criminal defense lawyer from Miami. I guess Marcus isn't very good at his job. You can't, huh? What about RICO cases, Marcus? What about accomplices, Marcus? What about co-conspirators, Marcus? Guess that Harvard degree ain't doing you so good, huh? I mean, you can't hold people on guilt by association? Isn't that what RICO laws were for? So I don't know who he's trying to gaslight here, and I guess he's trying to talk to the general public at large, people who might not be following this case or something, but I'll tell you what, Mr. Oscar here, Mr. Marcus, is not going to look very good, I suspect, after this trial is over and the jury renders its verdict. Ian Maxwell's TV interview with GMA is his first, he said, in 30 years. I'm not minimizing the seriousness of the allegations, but my sister's fighting for her life, and that's pretty serious too. Guess what? She's in jail because of her crimes, the alleged crimes that she has committed. So what do you mean? It's her own self-sabotage that has her there. You can't equate what's happening to her to what happened to these survivors. None of those girls asked for that. None of those girls woke up and said, oh, gee, I want to be trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Nobody woke up and said that shit. But Ghislaine Maxwell made the conscious decision to roll with Jeffrey Epstein. She made the conscious decision to work with Jeffrey Epstein. So please, miss me with that shit. You try and get in my lane with that kind of garbage and your rims will pop. Ghislaine wants to confront the accusers head on and deal with this and get on with her life. She is convinced, as she can be, that she will be exonerated. We as a family are behind her, solidly behind her. Well, that's all fine and well, right? I'm glad that you're behind your loved one, but it's an untenable position to be in for them. They don't have a defense. I mean, who are you going to call as a witness? Prince Andrew? What do you call Alan Dershowitz as a character witness? All the people that she can call as a character witness are also being alleged to be part of this criminal enterprise in one way or the other. So who exactly is she going to call up on the stand to talk about her stunning character? Her brother? A paid lawyer? Leon Black? Ian Maxwell said he knew little of his sister's life in New York, where she moved in 1991 after the death of the Maxwell family patriarch, British press baron Robert Maxwell. Well, how do you know what she was doing then? How can you be so adamant that she wasn't involved in this if you have no idea what she was doing during this time period? You see, this is what I'm talking about. They contradict themselves with their statements. And to be honest with you, if I'm recognizing it, realizing it, pointing it out, and tearing it apart, what do you think the lawyers are going to do? Because, folks, like I've said to you a million times, I am lucky I can tie my own shoes, okay? But it's not very hard to see the forest through the trees here. He said he was aware of Ghislaine Maxwell's friendship with Epstein, but only met him once. I have absolutely no memory of Epstein at all, he said. I had no knowledge of their life or the life that Ghislaine was leading in any great detail. Again, so how do you know what she was doing? How can you be so adamant that she wasn't abusing anybody? How can you be so adamant that these survivors are lying? What sort of axe do they have to grind here, sir? If it was about money, they could have just taken the money from the compensation fund and moved on with their life and not pressed the matter. But guess what? It's not just about the money. It's about justice being served. And your sister, if you didn't know, was palling around with one of the most prolific sex traffickers and abusers in modern history. And not only that, your sister is accused of partaking in that as well, sir. So when you weren't paying attention for all of those years, guess what? We were. So take a seat, sit down, and learn a little something maybe before piping up. The last time he saw his sister in person, Maxwell said, was a rare reunion of the 7 surviving Maxwell children in London on June 10th, 2019, on what would have been their father's 96th birthday. Wait, I thought Ghislaine Maxwell didn't leave the country after Epstein was killed. What's going on here? Again, so many holes in this whole argument that they have. It was just serendipitous that we all happened to be more or less in Europe and we got together, and it was a very happy, genuinely happy occasion for all of us. Less than a month later, Epstein was arrested at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey as he returned to the U.S. from his home in Paris. Oh, I'm sure that everybody was so sad about their good buddy Jeff Epstein getting arrested. Ghislaine is married with stepchildren, getting on with her life. We're all getting on with our lives. And then bang! This extraordinary development out of left field, Ian Maxwell said. It's just straight garbage that they would try and pitch this and gaslight people with this. Out of left field? Look, my dude, your sister has been under investigation for this forever. The problem is the federal government hasn't had the backbone to go all the way and see this through. Now they do. Now they have the receipts. Now they have the evidence. And your sister and your arguments aren't looking very good, my friend. Echoing the arguments of his sister's attorneys, Ian Maxwell insisted that the prosecutors only targeted her as a substitute for Epstein after the federal government failed to keep the alleged child sex trafficker alive to face the charges against him in 2019, which is garbage. All right, we know that there were more charges in the works for Epstein. We know that more people were going to be charged under a criminal conspiracy. And we know that Maxwell was going to be one of them. So don't act like she was living this perfect life and nobody was looking into her and no other charges were ever going to be filed. And furthermore, if she's so innocent and she had nothing to do with Epstein's crimes, while she's waiving things, why doesn't she waive her protection under the NPA? She's so innocent, right? Waive it. They're taking it out on my sister, damn it. That's wrong, he said. She is not Epstein. Epstein was guilty. He did time. Oh, wait, so Epstein's guilty, but your sister's not? We can't talk about your sister being guilty, but you could talk about how Epstein was guilty, huh? Hypocrite. He did time, and he was going to do a hell of a lot more time. But she is not him, and I don't know how many times I have to say it. She deserves to be treated as Ghislaine, presumed innocent. Get on with the defense, tell us what you've got to tell us, put it up, and then let the jury decide. Yeah, no shit, pal, that's what's going to happen here. That's the process we're in. And if you people would have focused a little bit more on her defense and building a solid defense as opposed to loopholes and technicalities, maybe your sister would be in a better, more defensible position right now. But as it stands, the quicksand is in effect, and she's stuck in it. The government contends that, at the heart of its case against Maxwell, are brave women who are survivors of serious crimes that demand justice, and who would deserve to see Maxwell brought to justice at a trial. 100%. That is all I have ever talked about here. Now, I don't care what anybody else says or talks about. I'm not responsible for anybody but myself. And where I'm at, all I have ever called for is a fair trial here, a fair investigation, and that has not occurred until recently. So now that the shoe is on the other foot, and Maxwell is being investigated, and the survivors' stories are taken seriously, oh, that's a whole different storyline from Team Maxwell, huh? Boy, the narrative changes. Prosecutors allege in court filings that the recollections of the victims bear striking resemblances that corroborate each other and provide compelling proof of Maxwell's active participation in a disturbing scheme to groom and sexually abuse minor girls. I mean, how much more evidence is needed? Let's get those grand jury transcripts from Palm Beach unsealed. Let's get her to waive the NPA. What are we waiting for? You know, they want to make all of these allegations from Team Maxwell. I got a few requests myself. So what's up? Let's rock. U.S. District Court Judge Allison Nathan, who was overseeing Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal case, could rule on the third bail application at any time. In rejecting the second request in December, Nathan cited Ghislaine Maxwell's initial lack of candor about the identity of her spouse and information about the couple's assets as among the reasons she would not grant bail. And still, we don't know what kind of assets they have. Oh, well, look at my tax return. Here's all the money I made. Yeah, okay. because that's what criminals do and money launderers. They claim it on their taxes. In opposition to the latest bail proposal, prosecutors argue the court should hesitate before trusting the defendant to be transparent about her finances and that she continues to pose an extreme risk of flight, and the additional bail conditions proposed by the defendant do not justify a reversal of the court's prior findings that no combination of conditions could ensure her appearance. That's pretty clear, cut, and dry. No combination of conditions could ensure her appearance. Pretty cut and dry. The family's attorney claimed the government's arguments are a smokescreen. The real reason she's not being granted bail is not because of any real risk of flight. No one's afraid she's going to really run, Marcus said. The government wants to keep her in custody to torture her, to break her down. Well, those are pretty big allegations there, Mr. Marcus. Have any proof to back that up, or are you just making assertions? You know, like you're complaining about other people doing towards the case in general. See how that works here? You see how the battle for the narrative is raging? And for decades, they were so used to having no people in the way, right? There was no obstructions to their narrative. Well, that's over. Those days are over. They're not in control of this narrative anymore, and the truth is going to come out. All this whinging and all this BS by the lawyers and her family, it's all fine and well. But July is quickly approaching, folks. My clock is set. The government has always disputed defense lawyers' contentions that Maxwell is being treated punitively as a result of Epstein's death in custody. Prosecutors stated in court filings that she has more time than any other detainee in the facility to review documents from her case. The flashlight searches, the government said, are required to confirm that the defendant is not in distress every 15 minutes. To do so, staff point a flashlight to the ceiling of the defendant's cell to illuminate the cell sufficiently to confirm that the defendant is breathing, prosecutors wrote. I mean, so that's the extent of the abuse, huh? That's what they're crying about? Let me remind you of the crying, scared Swedish girl who had her passport taken. And then think about Ghislaine Maxwell sitting in the jail cell, complaining about being bored. And you tell me which one is worse. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI @protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. All right, folks, I'll be back later on, and we will pick up where we left off. Have a great day, everyone.
Imagine an ER waiting room with your favorite blanket and pillow, your cat's Pixel and Widget, and your mom's chicken soup. At Dignity Health, we know the only thing worse than being in pain is being stuck in an ER waiting room. So we offer In Quicker. You get an estimated ER arrival time online so you can start your wait at home. It's just another way of putting leading-edge medicine within easy reach. Learn more at strosehospitals.org/ER. Dignity Health, including St. Rose Dominicans, Rose de Lima, San Martin, and Siena campuses in Henderson and Las Vegas. Hello, human kindness.
Nevadans are battle-born, but lately we've been tested like never before. So when COVID came to Nevada, Senator Cortez Masto went to work. She got loans for small businesses that saved 500,000 Nevada jobs and worked with President Biden to provide stimulus checks and tax cuts. Senator Cortez Masto got new funding to keep Nevada's first responders on the job, too. Call Senator Cortez Masto at 202-224-3542 and tell her to keep delivering relief for Nevada. Paid for by Majority Forward.